An anonymous NBA scout says Victor Wembanyama is not an impactful offensive player. He's absolutely awesome on defense and not impactful at all on offense. He just looks like he's playing without a whole lot of direction. Now, when I asked people who's been the most disappointing player through 2 weeks of the NBA season, Wembanyama's name came up a lot. He's averaging 17.7 points, 9.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 41% from the field, 22% from three, and I have to mention that is on 7 attempts a night. And of course, he's got like 3.5 blocks per game, almost 2 steals per game. That is never in question. Wembanyama is one of the most, if not the most impactful defensive player in all of basketball. But again, getting back to this, not impactful at all as an offensive player. So how do we get here? How does the biggest prospect since LeBron James have that great of a rookie season where he is already in defensive player of the year conversations, already in all NBA conversations, come out in year number 2 and through 9 games look like this? Where I believe that we had a Wemby problem long before the season had started, where the bar for Wembanyama was ridiculously high. Wemby is poised to collect maximum hardware. We're talking about MVP conversations, likely an all-NBA status and defensive player of the year. Now, this is just one singular writer for Bleacher Report, but this kind of conversations were really happening throughout NBA media. I mean, it's everywhere. ESPN put together the Wemby forecast before the season started, where they asked a bunch of people across basketball, specifically their own experts and writers, all of these questions about Victor Wembanyama. He will be the best player in what season? There's not even a question on whether or not he will be. It's like, when will he be the best player in the NBA? And about 16% of people said this next season. Most of the people saying it's going to take 3 years of his NBA career, 4 years of his NBA career. But without a doubt, Wembanyama will be the best player in basketball. They're talking titles, that he's guaranteed to win at least 1. MVPs, he's guaranteed to win at least 1. But most people believe that he's going to walk out with 3. Again, lofty expectations. And I'm a guy that has watched every single minute of Victor Wembanyama's season through these first 9 games. So let's talk about why his offense doesn't feel exactly as impactful as it did his rookie season. The main thing people will point to is, Wemby, you are 7'12". Why are you not just sitting in the post? Why are you not using that size to your advantage? And why are we shooting 7 3-pointers a game if we're gonna be a 22% 3-point shooter? Now, there's never been a level and never been a year of Wembanyama's career where he has been a above average 3-point shooter. You can go to his international stats, his rookie stats. The only time he shot above average was when he was in the Olympics this summer, and that was a handful of games. But the Spurs have always been this very peculiarly ran organization. Last year, we saw them take Jeremy Sohan, and through the first half of the season, they said, hey, you are our point guard. You have never played point guard at any level, whether you been when you were a kindergartner or when you were last year in France. You've never played point guard, but we want you to get reps at the point guard position. Not because we want you to be the point guard of the future, but mostly because we want to round out your game as an offensive player. And boy, that experiment sucked. I mean, as somebody that watched a ton of Spurs last season because of Wemby, that experiment sucked. I hated almost every single minute of it. And when I watched the Spurs this season, I would say Jeremy Sohan has been better at decision making. Is that because he played point guard for the first half of his year last season? I don't really know. But the Spurs are also taking a different approach in development with Wemby as well. So this is from Spurs Reporter. When Wemby was asked if he feels any frustration about his shot selection, there's no frustration because I know the staff and I are developing in the right way. And so I'm taking the shots I want to include in my development. What matters today is the intention for a long-term goal. The coaches are great. So there we have it. The 7 3-pointers we're seeing per game for Wemby, which still seems crazy to say aloud, has something to do with their developmental plan. And I would just assume this is just trying to round him out to be this 3-level scorer where there really is no recipe to guard him. Because as of today, those 3-pointers that he's taken, majority of them are completely wide open. He was a 30-something% 3-point shooter, low 30s% 3-point shooter last year. And it's just not a shot teams are willing to respect at this point. And I guess their idea is maybe in year 3, year 4, as he continues to get these reps, that becomes a shot that is deadly. I guess time will tell. But also right now, the job ain't easy for Wemby. Teams are guarding him dramatically different in year number 2 than in year number 1. In this season, teams are electing to have Wembanyama be guarded by forwards and sometimes guards because it's something about getting underneath Wemby that's really successful. He doesn't have a, high, or is it low center of gravity? I don't know how to really explain it. But pretty much every single team that the Spurs have played against this season has opted to do something like this. And look at this. When he does have an opportunity to get a post touch, you'll see a DeAndre Ayton playing heavily off number 40, Harrison Barnes, shout out to the vet. And you'll also see Too Many Cameras, Toumani Camara also play a lot off of Chris Paul because they know that this post touch is about to come and they're willing to load up completely and they'll live with a Harrison Barnes 3 or they'll live with a CP3 and so on and so forth. We're just getting the ball into the place that everybody wants him to be. It's all not impossible, but it's just so much more difficult this year compared to last year. And this is last year against the exact same team, not the same roster, but the exact same team, exact same coach. And Chauncey Billups in this game where Wemby dropped 30 against the Portland Trail Blazers, he was pretty much one-on-one with the big all game long. In this case, is Moses Brown. Shout out to Moses Brown. But it was one-on-one matchups all game long. And even here where he gets like a really deep touch into the paint, nobody's really there to help. Now, also, that's just... this roster is just not very good. But Wembanyama got so many one-on-one opportunities last season. And last year, one of the staples in Wemby's game was this spin move. When he had a smaller defender on him, he would get off the ball, in this case, give it to Trey Jones, spin off, and get an alley-oop to the basket. And then we get to this season where Wemby in this play is going to do that exact same play. He's going to give it up to a guard, see a smaller defender. He's going to get his spin move. But now look, there's help there. This time, it's Anthony Simons. And though there's a huge size difference between Anthony Simons and Victor Wembanyama, that lob that was so much there all last season is no longer there. The good thing about it is that because of that, it ends in a Julian Champagnie 3. And to counter what that anonymous scout said, I think Wembanyama has a lot of value in roles like this where you do see the extra help. There's a decision to be made here. Does he go to the corner with Julian Champagnie? Does he get a cut in Harrison Barnes? He throws a perfect pass to HB, who gets fouled. No bucket there, but that is Wemby's offensive impact, at least part of it. Even here in the second quarter on the sideline out of bounds play, it's really designed for Wembanyama to get a post touch here, but you see Klingon dives in completely, leaving Harrison Barnes completely open in order to force a turnover. Now, occasionally they did do some things that I thought were really cool when you would have the guy with the smallest defender, which is Scoot Henderson in this case, being guarding Mamu. Mamu comes, sets this screen for Wemby, and now there's nothing to really resist Wemby from getting to the basket. And here's the very next offensive possession down where they pretty much do the exact same thing. Was Harrison Barnes setting the screen. Wembanyama's going to get it, but instead of him having an open dunk, he sees a wall, and what does he do? He passes out of it to Harrison Barnes for an open 3. Harrison Barnes happens to miss. So from this point on, I think it's about changing the approach from Wembanyama as a player and the Spurs coaching staff. How do we create advantages by teams putting a smaller defender on Wemby? In your mind, you would think just like, hey, post up. But we know that Wembanyama is not necessarily stronger than a guy like Denny Abdia or a guy like Jeremy Grant, who had the assignment on him all game long yesterday. Does this mean that we put him more in the action as the ball handler? Do we get him more screens off ball like we saw in the 2 clips I just showed you? I don't really know, but of course they have to change their approach to make Wembanyama more of an overall threat. And I think we also have to remember that we have never really seen a player like Wembanyama before. Like, yes, we've had really tall players in basketball, for sure. But this is like a brand new make and model of a car. But it's so brand new that there's no manual for it. We don't know where to start the ignition. We don't know how to turn the windshield wipers on just yet. That's what Wembanyama is. I've been very vocal about my major criticism of Wembanyama, and that is that he is too much of a floater, a guy that can look lost on the offensive side of the ball. But I'm also a guy that never puts expectations on young players. Even for the guy that is the highest touted prospect since LeBron, I don't have many expectations for him because I recognize the progression is not necessarily linear, even for the guy with the most hype almost ever. And in my mind, a setback season or a 9-game sample size doesn't change the overall ceiling of a player. So I'm not really worried about who Wemby can become or anything like that based on these 9 games, or if you want to include last season as well. Because I firmly do believe the special ones figure it out. And I've seen enough from Wemby to deem him to be special. I do believe that if teams continue to load up with the smaller defenders and send 2 to 3 bodies, Wembanyama will adjust accordingly and get back to playing the level of basketball that at least he played last season. But I understand people not having a ton of patience, considering that he is potentially the savior of the NBA by Adam Silver's token. There's not going to be Bron here for much longer. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, James Harden, all of these older guys that carried the league for the 2010s and for the early parts of the 2020s are going to be gone. And they put a lot of eggs in the Wembanyama basket. And because of that, he got a lot of nasty televised games. Because of that, he's got a lot of media coverage. So they need him to be great. And when you do that, you don't really give an opportunity for growth. Like, come on, man. This is the shooting of the team. As of right now, there are only 3 players that are shooting league average or above from jump shots. It's Malachi Branham. It's Chris Paul. Shout out to Chris Paul. Revelation jump shooting season after last 2 years, him not being able to make a jump shot. He is up to 61% from jump shooting mid-ranges. Come on, man. Anyway, that's not what this is about. And Julian Champagnie has been great, specifically in the corner or whatever. But if you're trying to tell me that if you were coaching against Wembanyama and the Spurs and you know that there's only a few respectable jump shooters on the team, that you wouldn't send 2 to 3 bodies at Wemby every time he touches half court, you absolutely would. And well, that just makes it tough. And Wembanyama is now 20 years old, almost 21 years old. Young player, a lot of promise, obviously. I think some of this gets better when Devin Vassell comes back, and I think it's this weekend. He's one of their best creators and their best scorer on the team. But also, this is going to be something that the Spurs front office has to adjust. I'm not one of those guys that think you have to put all your cards on the table right now and try to make some trades this season, but you have to address the jump shooting issue with the Spurs in order to make the game easier for Wemby. Giannis is an absolute dog. Wemby, as of right now, doesn't have that same dog in him. You know what I'm saying? But Giannis's job gets significantly easier when they surrounded him with people that are threats to shoot 3-pointers. Every once in a while, I go to Brook Lopez's stats and remember that his first year in Milwaukee, 61% of his shots were 3-pointers. 61%. Now, the 2 previous seasons before that, he had already started shooting threes where it's almost 40% and 30%. But 61%, that was the type of spacing they built for Giannis. In the best offensive lineups that Giannis has had throughout the course of his careers are teams with that level of spacing, with the Chris Middleton, this is pre-Pat Connaughton not being great. Brook Lopez and then EB is a different story, but like he's had his shooting seasons as well. So again, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but the added spacing opens up the game so much more for Wembanyama. So to get back to the original point, I wholeheartedly disagree with this anonymous scout about Wemby not having any offensive impact, but I do recognize that it hasn't been as great this season as last. And hopefully, with time and the proper coaching, that will change throughout the course of the season.